Welcome, everyone.
All right.
Once again, my name is Kathy Hutchings. I'm calling in from SchoolChapters. I'm the Director of Training and Communications here, and we're so thrilled to have Dr. Madsen join us today. I apologize for a little bit of the meeting donors' technical difficulties. I do ask that you mute yourselves next to your audio options. There is, under headset and mic, there is a looks like a little microphone. If you scroll over that, it says mute my line. This is the clip. If you're dialing in, just please mute your phone as you would mute a regular telephone.
How do I do that? Oh.
On the chat box, which is right in the upper right corner, upper left corner of your screen, rather, there is a Q&A button, and that is a great spot to put questions that you want to be aware of as the organizer. So I thank you all for coming, and I'm going to hand it over to Dr.
Welcome, everyone. I'm really excited to be able to offer some thoughts and ideas for each of you. This whole session in a short timeline, I hope I can share with you a little bit about my story as a director of our Child Development Center here at Chadron State College. And then also the process that I used as we went through the whole idea of looking at assessment and collecting evidence and so forth. We are located at Chadron State College, which is in western Nebraska. We're state licensed by the Health and Human Services and have been since 1972. We are accredited by the National Association for the Education of Young Children, as Kathy mentioned to you, and have been since pretty much the inception of the process that you go through. Starting first of all with notebooks and gathering materials and so forth, and as more of that story and how it looks for us. We also have a certified Nature Explore Outdoor Classroom. That learning environment has been in place since 2009. We really focus on our year-round operation. So when we talk about program and curriculum and the assessment tools, which we use through SchoolChapters, that covers our timeline from 7 to 5:30, although we have an extended license if we need to. We're a year-round program, open enrollment, families 2 to 9 mostly, but we can be open for 2 to 12-year-olds. We have a full-time and part-time enrollment option. We're a nationally inclusive environment so all children are welcome. We have some really strong community collaborations that start the public schools, Western Community Health Resources.
You are now muted. You are now unmuted.
The Job Corps and then the local child care provider group. Our strong mission is to really aspire as a laboratory for educating educators and promoting that high-quality educator to those out in the community and support the educational arena, whether it's infants or toddlers or preschool education pieces that start early level system or even private school. Our strong mission is academic preparation, and that whole baccalaureate program. There's really exciting things that happen as a result of that, but that's blending early childhood, elementary education, and then special education as well. The first purpose that we serve here are, of course, looking at our undergraduate and graduate students because we are that laboratory. It's pretty critical that we provide practical research, critical business opportunities, along with the application piece, which is a real powerful part of why the accreditation has been so valuable. Another part of that purpose is to focus on families with young children. So a laboratory is successful unless we have children to serve and to work with as we interact and develop those best practices. So
Hello?
That's an important component.
Hello?
We also provide an environment for students to conduct applied research under the supervision of very highly qualified faculty and staff. So those are the three purposes behind what we're doing in our program that kind of sets the stage then for the goals that we set And a little bit about background. Our program is located about 450 miles from Lincoln and Omaha, so we're in the panhandle of Nebraska, way up in the corner, and quite a distance from other higher education institutions. So there's one of 2 labs in Nebraska. We're one of those laboratories. The other one is in Lincoln, Nebraska. So we have some goals that have been really highly supported with our local Nebraska Association for the Education of Young Children, and focusing on, first of all, children, students, our families, community, and then, of course, the environment and curriculum. So I'm sure the goals that you have in your programs aren't a lot different than what we've been trying to do. Our curriculum philosophy is very emergent in thinking about the Reggio Emilia approach, so because we've been inspired so much by the opportunity of exploration and curiosity. And it fits also very nicely with the focus we have on nature and what happens as we bring nature inside as well as have it outside. So we have the role of the child, which we think is to explore and discover. The role of the family is to support and nurture. The role of the teacher is to provide opportunities to learn. And a very powerful part of that then would be for us to provide materials. So when I talk about the philosophy of the program and what has happened to me as a director and over the years in our program is to really focus and ensure that people that work with us all buy into this philosophical belief system and work really hard to make sure that we're somewhat on the same page as far as what our curriculum looks like, but that also filters then, of course, into the overall program. So we're very play-based, we're strengths-based, we're working with a plan-to-review process and focusing a lot on life skills. We have an emphasis on health, safety, nature, and recycling, and nation and community service are a part of that support. So as you think about the role of the child, the family, the teachers, and the materials, and then think about the big picture of meeting both program and curriculum goals, I think that says a lot about what we're trying to do in this particular program. So this looks somewhat like an emergent play-based experience as we explore our world. And then my goal as director has been very much tried to look at how we can provide evidence that is easy to put into a system that works for everyone, easy to access, not very expensive because we never have enough money to do everything we want to do. It's efficient, provides the valuable evidence that is easily related and cross-referenced to our Head Start Collaborative or community public schools, and most importantly, the National Association for the Education of Young. So the transition for me looked somewhat like this. Because I was so concerned about making sure that I met all the needs of students and children and families and community, and there's such a diverse need. In western Nebraska, we serve a lot of single parents, it seems, of diverse populations. We have a high poverty rate of people. And so it just really seems, and I'm sure lots of you experience this, but it just seemed like there's a lot of need, and I had to figure out a way to focus on these diverse populations and yet organize things in a fashion so I felt really comfortable training and educating my staff and students and just a population of people that we could actually work together with and make sure that that training was effective. My other goal for this was to make sure as I taught students in classes in the early childhood programs to focus on quality, and that meant to me the only way to go is to first of all be licensed and then also seek national accreditation. So I attended a PDI, Professional Development Institute, way back in 2009 and became familiar with the SchoolChapters process and was determined to go from there and do what I could back in our own community to make this work very effectively. So it was a strong mission that I had that we could make this more viable. At this point, we had done some things with PowerPoint slides, and I was real proud of the fact that we had that all saved on disks and so forth. And then I said, oh, this looks so much better. We need to really think about the electronic focus, and SchoolChapters was, to me, the answer that we needed and met my needs as director, and I was then convinced to take this product, and we had to make a decision about moving forward. So here's my state, the stages I went through and we went through here in our program. We had to decide what product we were going to use, if we stay with these slides in a PowerPoint format or if we transition everything to electronic. I then had to do some shifting of attitude and creating a team of people looking seriously at the process and how we store that evidence and how we're going to get it all in one spot, but save some time as well. The organizational piece was a part of that too, not just where it goes, but can we keep up with it and manage everything that we're trying to do with these diverse populations of people we serve. And then we looked at the power of documentation, really the outcome, and how does that make us a better program and improve, which is the real mission of accreditation, that you take what you have and you just keep growing and becoming better. And then, of course, sharing the wealth with other people. So I'd like to walk through each one of these a little more distinctly for you so I can tell you a little bit more about how this evolved. First of all, it was a huge frustration level at lots of levels, and lots of people were frustrated, teachers, because they didn't have enough time to do what they wanted to do for these portfolios they were doing, whether it was paper-based or taking pictures or whatever. We were killing a lot of trees, and we didn't want to do that anymore, and it just seemed like we were constantly in a flux of trying to figure out how to make this better. So we then said, you know, here's the 21st century. We have to utilize technology and become more efficient. So we either stay with what we had, PowerPoint slides set up, paper-based sorts of things as backup, or we move forward. And it was this professional conference that I attended again another year and said, okay, this is a chance to open some new doors and really look at some amazing things. And that really became SchoolChapters for us. That, first of all, was not only professional looking, but it was presented in a way that I knew, because of the NAEYC accreditation process, buying into it, that they also then supported what we were trying to do with keeping this together. So there were lots of things that we had to think about. Taking our binders and looking at the stories that we had in containers, and now shifting everything to a whole new look. And this inverted triangle is a perfect example of taking something that was rather narrow in look and narrow in feature and efficiency to something that I think is very big and broad, functional, and has just an unlimited amount of possibilities to manage it. And so it really is an open door. What you put in there is wide open to share with your staff for staff training or families, as well as serving as an accreditation process. So the decision was made that we go towards SchoolChapters. We spent some time thinking and working with Kathy and Vincent Bassa and identifying, you know, how does this process all work, and had done some training, and then basically we just plunged right in. And that required then the paradigm shift, because I still would get things like, I don't have time to do what I'm doing now, I'm already overworked, it just can't possibly be done, to more open discussions. And as we played with it and looked at what the possibilities were and began to take our pictures, photographs, and put them in electronic format, how easy it was to go from one portfolio to another and then collect that so that we could use it as evidence in other ways. The feedback and the planning, and even more planning, was just almost a continual process on a day-to-day basis. Oh, wow, this is exciting to, I have so many pictures, I don't know what to do with it. So we really did evolve and shift the attitude to, this can really open some doors, and the access to it and support that we have for our program goals overall began to be much more exciting to teachers and students and classes that I was teaching, as well as myself as director. So the third stage that I see as being pretty powerful, and probably one of the big pieces, is the strategic planning. That, you know, we really have to make sure that we educate people and we don't just jump into something like sometimes we do and we say, oh, this is going to be great, and then kind of dies because the access to it or efficiency and time element gets in the way. So we creatively looked at designing this high-quality, appropriate, inclusive plan, which focused a lot on our vision and our mission, to our curriculum philosophy, and all of the inclusive practices, and including those teachers in some self-assessment and immersing them in standards, as well as bringing them into some new technology levels that some of them were not very comfortable with. The portfolios and the education process looked at the 10 standards for the program itself in that portfolio, and then the 6 standards that overlap for the classroom. As a director, I spent most of my time looking at the program part. Teachers looked at the classroom part, and then we worked together by sharing information in both portfolios so that it could go back and forth and cross-reference, which was a wonderful opportunity for educating and looking at the type of evidence that could go back into our classrooms and be supportive of things like training on specific topics, such as building relationships with families, or simply looking at training on safety and health. That was really exciting. This is a sample of what our program portfolio would look like in the electronic format. So here's our image and the narrative that goes underneath of it. And this is just one of the standards, but a very powerful one. The same picture would also be seen in some fashion, perhaps in the curriculum portfolio, that identifies then that we do provide opportunities to for families of different races, religions, home language, and so forth. It's also backed up then by things that we would do in the classroom. Here is a sample of just one example of what would look like in a classroom portfolio, where some written material is available, but it would also then support the fact that we are looking at the language of the families that we work with too, and how we understand it. So there's a huge amount of cross-reference and opportunity to share all the resources that we have back and forth between portfolios, but also then, again, for training, which is just really huge in that educating educators and community and the diverse populations. Another visual of our writing sample that we took a picture, and this is how we could prove then to the accreditors that we provide opportunities throughout the year. And we would do this in chronological order of how things occurred by our curriculum plan. So when we talk about families and getting acquainted in fall, then we also can put pictures in there that move from where they were in the fall and their ability to communicate to what might happen as they stayed in our program and they learn new skills in language, written format, or any of the domains. Here's another picture of our evidence for the project approach and how that looks as far as what the accreditors might see. Very powerful evidence, as well as what the narrative would identify and explain. So we really have a chance to say, you know, this is what we do in our program. I'm sorry you can't see it every day, but it's pretty powerful stuff. Stage 4 is about the process and the plan that we looked at. And as school chapters became an immersion process, we just adopted it, and it just became something we do every week and continue to do. But it's a process about teaching and training and helping and support people every day in their workload. So here's an example of how we take the professional development and we map out our standards. We look at how that collection of information is put together, and then how does that tie to our routine and documenting information. So this whole process is something that everyone is supportive of and buys into. which is really exciting, not only for the program, but it leads into the organizational management that every director wants to see happen, from proving that we have a vision and a 5-year plan to all the pieces and parts that are in between that, and how that really does support the outcomes and the evidence that makes a program better and better all the time. This is a visual I created and feel really comfortable with using as a teaching tool. I'm a very visual learner, and I have to see it to believe it, and that's why the pictures are powerful for me. But what I identified was it was pretty important for my student staff, especially, to see the power of building relationships. And so that's where we started. We got to know each other more. We got to know each other's skills and interests. And as staff, then, we began to evolve on how this could actually look for putting our evidence into place on a continual process. So you'll see in this visual where not only are the staff and what happens with them, looking at their strengths and the assessment process, our teaching survey that we do annually, and then bumping up to what the families experience and building relationships with them and getting them involved, looking at the conferences we do, and then, of course, the survey they do, taking that information about the children and what really happens with the relationships we build in that particular area, and then tying it to the bottom triangle where you'll see the curriculum and environment. But all of what happens in the first 3 areas and overlaps into our curriculum and environment and begins to be a pretty continuous evidence-based practice that we look at all the time. And so this is real powerful and continues to be every time we meet and strategically plan. So what did we really learn from this whole process, and what really happened as a result of it? That the digital and electronic world has arrived. We have to get ready for that. We prepare for it, but we have to really embrace the changes that are in front of us. And coming from the typewriter era, really, truly, I think that the digital age is something that not only saves us time, but certainly is something that is accountable more than what we've had before in that learning and evidence practice. We have learned that it saved us a lot of time. We've learned to organize our time better. We can dovetail between our calendars and our newsletters and our evidence that we create in the classroom for children's growth and development, to assessing our teachers, to putting it right into the SchoolChapters electronic portfolio approach. And those standards then are just cross-referenced on a continual basis. Our focus is to showcase our strengths and to build upon those areas of weakness, and we're always trying to do that all the time, gathering that evidence so we're constantly teaching and training as we go forward. We had our on-site visit on December 3rd, 2012. We had built portfolios for 2 years through the electronic method. Very, very successful. Pretty exciting to know that the evaluator looked at all of our evidence online, and that was the first time that she'd ever done that. She was very impressed, not only with the professional quality, but the amount of evidence that could be supported and justified. Our scores are very high. We met all criteria, had no areas that we had of weakness, and truly felt very comfortable from her perspective as well as ours about this is the way that we need to be going continually and keep that process moving forward. A very, very user-friendly tool, and she found it that way as well as we did, putting our evidence in. She could go through her criteria and just simply click on different categories and find what she needed to find. And she commented that she knew when she'd been through it now, she was going to find it easier as she kept moving forward. So, again, she was very impressed. The 7th stage that we went through, we're truly looking at the fact that our journey really just began. From the paper base that we did, to the bins that we had, to the even in between where there was some PowerPoint slides that we thought we were doing really well, now has evolved even more to taking iPads and iPhones, mobile units into our classroom. We're doing some things with texting. We're linking that to parents now, so when we text about behavior or situation in the classroom or some evidence the children are working on in an activity, that goes right back to a parent, and they can be looped in communication-wise to what's really happening. So that's very, very exciting for us. So we feel really comfortable with the way we are moving forward and what's really happening as our journey just continues. Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to share my story. It's exciting, and I hope all of you can find the process as easy and as exciting as we have. I'm not going to say it's not without some painful sorts of days of making sure you have the right evidence in, because School Chapters truly gives you the opportunity to keep up with the evidence that and changes that the accreditation body makes. They do all that for you, and your task then is to put your evidence in to make sure that you can justify what they've asked of you. Truly exciting, and I can't tell you how much we have enjoyed and appreciated all of the support, but also the power behind the evidence we have to share. So thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Madsen. We would love to take questions at this time. There is a Q&A box, or I can feel free to pop them in the chat box as well, so everyone can see them. But we would love to take any questions that you may have. Okay, here's one. Dr. Madsen, can you talk a little bit more about how you incorporate NAEYC accreditation? I know the question is that the portfolio is an intensive piece of the accreditation process, but how do you incorporate the NAEYC accreditation process throughout all 5 years of the program?
Once we had all the evidence in place, we began continually, as it actually continues to be a process. So once a month, if not more often, as I make changes in our calendar or our structure of our classroom or teaching staff change, I go in and I update that, and so it's a continual process. What I was doing with the paper-based portfolios was once a year I'd sit down and I just kind of make changes, because you are required to have evidence for 12 months visible for any unannounced visit that they might provide for you. I just made it my practice once a month. I would go through each classroom and each of the program portfolios and make sure we were on board and on task with everything that was in there. And that's much like what we do for licensing requirements too. So it's just really a continual process. I hope I answered your question.
Yes, I think so. There was a question about if you're using school chapters for individual child portfolios as well. Sorry about that.
No, we are not using them right now. I am going to be using them in the fall for the e-portfolios for my student teacher assistants. They will be using all of those starting as freshmen and then gathering their information and putting information together over the 4-year time that they're in our higher education institution. We are not using them right now for the individual child in school chapters, but we have another system that we're using that really is effective. Yet we take pieces and parts out of the portfolio to put with the individual portfolio that we put together for the children themselves.
Thank you, Dr.
Hope that helps. Sure.
Absolutely. Beth has asked if there's a fee for school chapters, and yes, we are a subscription-based model for accessing portfolios. It's kind of an a la carte based on the number of portfolios that you need, and we'll be happy to. Our pricing is on our website. We'd also be happy to follow up with everyone individually, and everyone who attended will be getting a follow-up phone call from our representative to answer any further questions that you may have about this, specifically about the product. Are there further questions for Dr. Madsen? At this time, was